very hard to lose him at a point where he barely started.
Everyone thinks that it's something that happens to a small baby, and our family is testament that that's just not the case.
How do you say duck? Duck?
I remember the paramedic saying to me that it looked like it was SIDS, and I just kept saying, no, he's too old, it can't be SIDS.
We lived in ignorant bliss, thinking that this could never happen to us.
The highest burden of sudden unexplained death in the after year is in the first 5 years, in toddlers and preschool children.
It's a mystery that's baffled doctors for hundreds of years. Why do these precious, healthy little angels die suddenly in their sleep?
I went in to check on him, and basically I'd woken up to every parent's nightmare.
Most of us are familiar with the name Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, or SIDS, a heartbreaking condition where sleeping babies, for some reason, don't wake up.
To just be told that there's absolutely no explanation as to why your healthy child goes to bed and doesn't wake up the next morning is unbearable.
But neuropathologists at Harvard's Medical School in Boston have made groundbreaking discoveries. They now know children have been dying of the same SIDS disease up to 6 years old.
Infants went on and died in the second or third year who had the same underlying problem.
It's called SUDC, sudden unexplained death in childhood, when a child is older than 12 months but has the same lack of symptoms as SIDS, when an infant dies of unexplained causes under 12 months old. The difference is just the child's age.
Historically, we have thought as the age of 12 months as a complete break, but through our work and the work of others, we're beginning to realize there may be a continuum.
Valen was a beautiful little boy. He was the kind of kid that would go into daycare and help another child. He was the kind of kid that would want to kiss someone if they fell over.
Last year, little Valen Hewitt spent the morning at the beach. He came home and his mum Britt put him to bed for an afternoon nap. He was 2.5 years old.
When I put my son to bed, he was a healthy little boy. I don't think anyone could have been as shocked as I was to go in and wake him up. And he didn't wake up.
Britt says she knew all about SIDS and did everything by the book to keep her little man safe during that first year high-risk period.
I remember thinking when he got to about 1 year old, oh, okay, I did all the right things. I put him on his back. I kept the room ventilated. I kept him cool. I kept him warm enough. And for that to happen on the 13th of April at 2 years, 8 months was a total shock.
Britt and Glenn had no idea their little boy wasn't out of danger.
To not get any answers to your questions, you can't reflect and think, you know, if I'd just done that one thing differently. I have 1,000 things I could have done differently. I have no idea if they would have made a difference.
He didn't have a chance to really find out what his passions were, you know. He showed some signs at some things, you know, he loved cars. He loved animals, he loved the beach. I would have done my best to make sure he loved cricket. But
and now they fear the same fate for their daughter Palace.
by not having an answer, we don't know. Are there things we're doing that put Palace in the same risk?
The problem is the number of SUDC cases in Australia is unknown. There's been no official recording system for the disease. But in America, where they've been collecting data, SUDC kills 1 in every 100,000 children, compared to 1 in every 5,000 babies who die of SIDS here in Australia.
Although it's rare, it has happened to them, and it does happen to people.
Dr. Hannah Kinney is one of only a handful of SUDC researchers in the world. In the past 10 years, she's studied more than 200 cases of unexplained deaths in children from 1 to 5 years old.
It's like a pie, and you can cut the pieces of the pie, and you'll have different diseases that result in the sudden death of children. But the largest category is unexplained.
Incredibly, Dr. Kinney has found the majority of SUDC toddlers have the same brain abnormality in an area called the hippocampus, crucial for controlling the child's heartbeat and breathing.
It prevents the hippocampus from functioning normally, particularly during sleep, and it can result in an abnormal wiring and sudden discharge and affect the brainstem and result in sudden death.
In many of these cases, Dr. Kinney has also found a history of febrile seizures. Little Valen had a febrile seizure just a year before he passed away.
And in the story with the hippocampus, we found that 60% of those children had a history of a febrile seizure, a seizure with a fever, or family history of febrile seizures.
Febrile seizures are fairly common in toddlers. It's when their heart suddenly beats a little slower or their breathing stops briefly. And now this information could give parents a warning to take extra precaution.
We give this information to the clinicians, and they are in the process of devising new guidelines around the treatment of children with febrile seizures.
You just think that you're in the clear after 12 months.
Like the Hewitts, Robert and Kylie Truen say they too had never heard of SUDC.
I remember that morning him just apologising to me and just repeatedly saying, I'm so sorry, and I never had a second where I doubted what he'd done or how he'd look after Coops.
Little Cooper was 16 months old. He'd learnt how to stand.
Oh, good boy, good boy.
And walk.
Go Cooper, yay!
But when his dad put him to sleep one night 5 years ago, little Cooper never woke up in the morning.
When I walked into the room was cold. I just had a feeling and I could see he wasn't naturally in the cot. And as soon as I touched him, he was cold.
If we had have had a monitor on his cot, chances are we would have taken it off after he turned 1 because we had no idea that this could happen at this age.
Determined to find answers, Rob and Kylie found there was no research into SUDC in Australia. So they started the Cooper Truen SUDC Research Fund, raising more than $360,000 for Dr. Kinney and her team, who have now set up a base in Melbourne.
We need to get that awareness out there because if we can just save one child, then it's all been worth it. But we need to tell as many people as we can about SUDC and how you can, monitor your children.
Once you reduce your SIDS deaths, then you're going to look for the other causes. And you're going to realise that, once that's down, then the SUDC really are more of a problem.
Perth paediatrician Dr. Jackie Skurlock has worked in sudden infant death for more than 20 years. She says more money needs to go toward this research.
The more we learn about all mechanisms of disease and death, the better we're able to cope and understand and perhaps even prevent.
Until then, Dr. Kinney says parents can only do their best, but should remember the basics. When your baby is under a year old, don't sleep in the same bed and make sure they're put to sleep on a firm mattress on their back. Keep the room ventilated and don't let them overheat. And after that vulnerable 12 months...
As we get into toddlers, and particularly toddlers with the history of febrile seizures, to control the fevers quickly when they arise, and also just good general pediatric care and constant vigilance.
As for little Valen's family, his auntie Lynette Hewitt's doing her best to make a splash.
I just felt like I had to do something. And I said, I'm thinking I've got to do something tough. So what about I swim to Rottnest and back?
That's right, Lynette's swimming from Cottesloe to Rottnest and back to raise money and awareness for kids and SIDS. That's a 40-kilometre swim, a feat few have ever achieved.
Anything's possible when you've got a little angel there with you.
On a mission hoping that one day both of these families might have answers to why their little men aren't here today.
And so we're asking anyone that has kids, that loves a kid, that knows a kid, to please donate so that we can solve this mystery, so we can get an answer, so we can buy that piece of the puzzle.